Thank you, Gene. And thank you for everybody that's attending the conference. Thanks for ACCP to host these and attend these. It's just it's an honor. And I think it's a great event and a great opportunity. And I'm looking forward to sharing some information with you guys today and really just having a conversation about parks and playgrounds, which is really a fun thing to talk about today. In the middle of the day, it's 1 o'clock where I am, and middle of the day, it's always fun to talk about parks and playgrounds. So my name is Rick Wood, and I'm the Senior Business Development Manager at Impact Parks. And just a little bit about Impact, we bring together philanthropy, communities, and data to develop positive and measurable change. And we do that through parks and playgrounds. And we also do that through our turnkey service approach, which is basically from discovery, working with the neighborhoods and communities, from discovery of their needs, design, construction, all the way through delivery of a product and a report at the end. So enough about Impact Parks. We've been fortunate enough to work with corporations, some really kind of cool projects. So I want to share those with you today as well, some interesting case studies. And the purpose of today's presentation is to kind of share with you what we were seeing in the marketplace, why corporations and nonprofits are using parks and playgrounds and community spaces as a key way to make impact through their CSR strategy or through their corporate giving and even employee engagement. So, but first, I want to talk about why parks. And let's go on to that section on why parks. If I want to talk about community spaces, I'm talking about parks and playgrounds. And today, we're talking about what we found in the marketplace. And I want to just challenge you to think about, again, trying to get you out of the work world for just a moment this afternoon. I want you to think about one of your favorite park or playground experiences. Maybe it was a national park you visited, maybe it was a camping trip at a state park, or maybe it was your favorite neighborhood playground that you would walk to during the summer. And if you don't mind, just put that in the chat. I just want to engage a little bit about, maybe think about what that place was like, what it meant to you, and just put that in the chat of what your favorite spot is. For me, parks have been a part of my life, basically for all my life, both personally and professionally. They played a huge role. And I've been in the park, basically the park business world for about 20 years. As an urban planner, I was helping design neighborhoods and parks, neighborhoods around parks as a central focus. As a member of the Trust for Public Land, as a state director for 15 years, helping to conserve land or build parks and greenways and river walks. So they've been a part of my life for a long time. Parks, if you think about them, parks are great gathering places. I mean, they are the space where everyone is equal. Rich, poor, black, white, big, small. I mean, they are the great equalizer. Large landscapes to small, active pocket parks. Parks help us know how to interact with each other. They help us socialize. They help us grow. They show us how to play and interact, and they even help us relax. So when you were thinking about your favorite park or your playground, you may not have been thinking about, wow, that park helped me relax, or that park helped me get physical activity, but it was. And we have some really good data and some really good stories that tell us that. So jumping right in, more specifically, we know that parks increase physical activity. There's direct link or direct evidence between the time spent in a park or a playground with a direct correlation of contributing to better physical health. So a strong link between those two. So which really leads to reduced cardiovascular disease, reduced heart disease, reduced diabetes. So we know there's a strong link there. Study after study shows the more time you spend in a park, the healthier you are. Next slide. Parks promote mental health as well. So by reducing stress, by reducing and improving your mood, we know parks can increase your mental health. There's been a lot of conversation about mental health, especially with COVID. and about the concern over the mental stability of our country and our youth. And we know that parks can add to that, even to the point where reduced medications or increased job satisfaction and job stability. Also, we know that parks can help promote an opportunity for diversity, equity, and inclusion. We know DEI is a complex, big topic, and corporations are dealing with this in various different ways. But we know that we can pull very targeted mapping data and target neighborhoods based on demographic, based on race, based on income levels. And we can layer that over things like park need or park investment. Maybe there's communities that haven't had a park investment in 15, 20, or 30 years. So those neighborhoods need park investment. So we know that we can try to map those things out and identify and target neighborhoods. Also, inclusive playgrounds are happening all over the country where we are retrofitting playgrounds. There's a need there to make sure that kids and families of all abilities can play together. Used to, if you think about a playground that was, this 20 or 30 years old, the kids with a disability may be sectioned off or segregated off into a specific area and only can play there. But now we know that we can build and design, and build playgrounds that are available to build with kids with all abilities. We also know that parks can strengthen local economies. This is so important to start off with community engagement to make sure that we know that communities, the communities actually get engaged on the front end, and they tell us what they want to happen in that park or playground versus us coming in and saying, this is what I think you need or what I think you want. And when on the front end, when the community is engaged on the front end, they take more pride in that park. And when there's more pride in that park or that community space, then that pride leaks over into the neighborhood and that economy is strengthened. Finally, parks do promote intergenerational activity and civic engagement. We are seeing all sorts of activity kind of anecdotally where in this picture on the slide where dads and sons or grandfathers and grandkids are out there racing. We call it kind of accidental fitness where all of a sudden you're on a 40-yard dash and you're racing and you realize, oh, okay, I'm actually sweating and I'm getting some exercise. But we're also seeing modeling happen where maybe the adult is in the park or playground where they are exercising and getting some workout while the kid is playing on the playground. So there's really some interesting play here that's quite magical when the kid and the caretaker, the parent, the grandparent is there with them and partaking with them and not just sitting on a bench. Next slide. Let's talk about audience for just a minute and audience reach. 80% of Americans visit local parks more than twice a month. And the bottom line here is that parks are where people go. It's the best place to have an impact on a large number of people. The National Recreation Park Association just released a study that they said 260 million Americans visited their local parks in the last year. So when you think about a corporation making an investment in a park or a playground through the CSR strategy or an investment like that, it is a large audience to reach. And then when a park or a playground is built, these things can last a long period of time. So it's not only a large audience, but it's also a long time period where you can have a positive experience on those people. So I want to jump into a couple case studies. And this first one is Blue Cross Healthy Places in Tennessee. So Blue Cross Healthy Places in Tennessee was really a result of a corporate strategy with board planning, thinking about how they can have an impact on Tennesseans and make that impact stronger and more direct, actually. So the goal for Blue Cross in Tennessee was to create an active, healthy space across Tennessee that connects people and fosters a sense of community. And the outcome was a series of parks and playgrounds throughout the state. And right now we are at a total, we're still in the middle of this, but right now they have built around 12 signature sites in about 4 years. And this signature site is basically a campaign that they developed that is called Blue Cross Healthy Places. Again, very strategically, very targeted on an audience in Tennessee to help create a healthier Tennessee. There's a story about Memphis. After we helped them build a park in Memphis, we did the community engagement side of it, and we designed with the community in mind. We actually had a large community engagement event. We had food trucks, we had school teachers, we had a lot of different people there. And we were engaging the community, the neighbors, the parks department, and all asking how they would envision a brand new park in this area. This was actually a renovation of a park. So this park was so kind of underused and underinvested for a very long time. Memphis has 150 parks in its system, and this ranked number 148 as far as park visitors, as far as use goes. So the community came out in droves to tell us what they would like to see in their park, and they voted on them. They put dots up, by the favorite amenities they wanted and what they wanted to look like, and just had a grand vision for their space. Once the park was built and delivered, the celebration was just amazing. And today, that park is ranked number 2 in the entire Memphis park system as far as number of visitors attending that park or visiting that park. Next slide. So here are some of our sample findings for Blue Cross. So who uses Blue Cross Healthy Places in Tennessee? And we received most of this data from both QR codes and observation data. There it is. 95% of the groups included children 5 to 12 years of age. And 58% of the groups included teens and adults. Now, again, we're just trying to get an idea of who's going to these places, who they are, how old they are. And this is a really nice breakdown of, you always think of playgrounds as like young kids, 12 and under, 11 and under, but really getting a nice mix at these Blue Cross Healthy Places of teens and adults. 29% of the groups were intergenerational, as we talked about earlier about why parks are so important. They have this intergenerational, 3 generations are attending together, and that is above the national average. So how are people using these spaces? 30% of the visitors visit 2 times or more per week. That means they're coming back, they're happy, they like to come back to the space. And then 97% say they plan to return, which is a fantastic piece of data for us. 85% of visitors spend at least 30 minutes at these sites, and 36% spend more than an hour. Again, if you go back to that physical health characteristic, the physical health of being in a park longer, the healthier you tend to be. Again, research shows that just 20 minutes of time spent in a park can improve a person's well-being. And this is a great one. This is always a great one for us. It's a bit of a self-brag, but it's also something that's great to report to boards or trustees or investors to say, almost 100% of the visitors that attended this park or went to this park were satisfied. So why? Why do people visit these healthy places? The top 3 reasons for visiting is, number 1 is physical activity. 38% says this is a safe, fun place. I go there for physical activity. The second one is emotional. So that mental well-being we talked about at the very beginning is a really important reason for going to these parks. And then finally, public service. This comment's funny, sad, but funny, only playground in the county. And I'm very thankful for it. So this is a comment I just wanted to share with you. Thank you for keeping children with disabilities in mind while designing this park. We loved it and we'll definitely be back. So this came directly from a park user that we're very proud of. Again, in this slide, you can see obviously you can see the happy faces, which is a celebration. This is a ribbon cutting event, but you can see the colors of blue. You can see the branding. You can see the activities that are there, and you can see a lot of people being excited about it. This is very purposeful, and Blue Cross Tennessee really decided that they wanted this to be branded with their color, with their message. and we help them deliver that message to this community. The second case study is a little bit more targeted, I would say, to just some very specific and even smaller audience. And this one is a University of Tennessee in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and it's an outdoor fitness park. Again, location is Chattanooga, but their goal was to create a communal outdoor fitness site for the faculty and the students of the university to remain active and to maintain good mental health. Here's some of our sample findings. 91% of the users are returning users, so meaning they're coming back on a regular basis. They found it, they went there once, and they're coming back. 86% of the users stay between 31 minutes and 5 hours. I'm not sure who's staying there more than 5 hours, but that's a big number. 86% of the users are staying there for more than 30 minutes. So again, you think about that, how much time you spend in a park, the healthier you are. It's a very measurable kind of a thing. And then 100% of users feel safe at this facility. 50% of the users are using this fitness equipment a few times a week or at least once a week. And then we had a comparison going on between parks that had this fitness equipment installed versus parks that did not have it installed, and how are people using these differently and how are they acting differently. And we noticed that there were twice as many park users at the fitness parks relative to those with the comparison parks. So once again, it kind of gives us a little bit of an indication of people that are using, they're going there for a purpose and they're going there with a reason to work out. And again, we found that of the fitness park users, they were performing at higher kind of rigorous, moderate or vigorous intensity at greater levels at the parks that had the fitness equipment. Again, if you're targeting this audience, you're able to see that this very tactical strategic investment is having an impact on college kids and adults. So the top 3 reasons for visiting a fitness park or a fitness zone park. Number 1, reduce stress. That probably is an obvious answer if it was installed at a university, a lot of tests or whatever. It's kind of in between classes. Number 2 is lose weight, and number 3 was to gain strength. Here's an image of the equipment that was installed. Again, it's not a large facility. This is a very strategic investment, and we have some branding that can happen, with the coloring that can match a company's colors. The branding on the surfacing can happen there if a brand wants to get involved there. But, if you want to target an audience that is college age, adult age, and it aligns with your mission of health and wellness, or reducing obesity, or reducing heart disease, this is one of those very tactical investments that can happen. The third and final case study is one in Hoover, Alabama. Again, this is an inclusive playground, a large facility with all kinds of activities on it. Their goal, to create an inclusive play space for all ages and abilities to promote physical and social and emotional health and inclusion. So top 3 goals for this site. Number 1 goal for this site was diversity, equity, and inclusion. The second one, physical health and lifestyle. And the third was social, emotional, and health and wellness. So some findings that we have from the Hoover site. We found that 99% of the visitors were moderately or extremely satisfied. Another one of those good comments to give to investors or your board or your partners. 66% of the visitors were visiting for the very first time. So this was a renovation of a project. So we were able, I think a lot of the people here were coming for the very first time because of the excitement. They saw the construction going on, and this was a first-time visit. And then 100% of the visitors plan to visit again because they loved it so much. Of the groups that were surveyed, 61% of them had children, which is to be expected, and 40% of the groups had teens and adults. So very good, once again, a good 60-40 split on groups that having both teens, adults, and children. 86% of the visitors had met the recommended physical activities. It's important that we design parks and playgrounds to meet the physical activity of that neighborhood. And this 86% of the visitors were satisfied with that. And 68% of the visitors spend between 45 minutes and an hour at this playground. Again, keeping people outside at this play space for a longer period of time. So the top 3 reasons for visiting Hoover: social and emotional health, the environment, and this one is the environment, meaning it was the design of the space. And number 3, the physical health and the lifestyle behavior. This is an image of the Hoover, Alabama playground. And again, when you think about inclusivity and inclusive playgrounds, you think about those playgrounds that were built 20 and 30 years ago that may not have investments. We're seeing a lot of renovations of these spaces so that it meets the needs of the community, maybe the changing needs of the community, or as we build new ones, it's very targeted to make sure that kids of all abilities can play and experience playing together all at the same time in the same space. Let's go to the next one. So that's the end of my presentation, formal presentation. But I certainly want to open it up to questions and opportunities to answer any questions you may have. This is the information, my email, my phone number. And I just would like to close with a couple of challenges to you. I mean, as we kick off summer, it is June the 8th after all. And as we kick off summer, I would just challenge you to go to your local park. And when you go to your park, maybe it's your favorite park, or maybe it's your neighborhood park. When you go to your park, I want you to kind of notice how people are using it. How are they playing? Are they picnicking? What are they doing? It'd be interesting for you to kind of see it through that lens of how people are using parks. And then secondly, I just challenge you to have fun, get outside and get some fresh air and enjoy your park or your playground. So I'm going to close with that and then open it up to questions. And Jean, if you want to take over the chat.
Yeah, so there are a couple of questions that the audience has posed that we'd love to hear your insights on. In recognition that many ACCP members are in charge of employee volunteerism programs at their companies, I'd love to hear sort of how you've worked with some of your corporate partners and how they engage volunteers in their companies in these park projects.
Thank you for that. That's a great question that we get often. And we do try to provide a unique, tailored experience or a unique tailored campaign for companies. So if a company said, there's certain things we probably cannot do, with a volunteer, but we've had volunteers work with us from everything from mixing cement to landscaping to helping put panels on the sides of the playgrounds to make sure that the panels are up there properly. The actual structural components of the playground, our professional contractors do that, but it's an incredible opportunity for employee engagement to be out there at the beginning and at the end. We're actually working with a company right now that wants to have their employees engaged on the front end. So working with kids to help design the playground. And so these employees may be involved on the front end on helping design and think through what a vision of a playground might be. And then on the back end to help actually construct part of it. So yes, we can do that.
Great. Just a reminder to the audience, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A section. Another question that we have, so as you think about, you're creating a partnership with a company in all these projects. So what are some best practices that you have found in making this partnership work?
Well, when you saw on all those slides, each one of them had goals. What is the goal of this project? It's one thing just to go out and say you want to build a playground, to make the community a better place. And that's a great place to start. But I would encourage, when we sit down, I would encourage every corporation, if you're considering building a park or a playground, I would just take the time. The very first thing you do is to take the time and figure out what your goals are. What do you want out of this? You want to help the community. You want to impact kids' lives. But is it diversity and inclusion? Is it health and wellness? Is it physical health? Is it reducing childhood obesity? Is it trying to create playgrounds that have, or a play space that's inclusive of all abilities? Is it creating more of a green space that's more reflective for respite and meditation? But those kinds of questions on the very front end are critical because it sets the tone for your program. It sets the tone for the cost and the budget. It sets the tone for everybody involved. So I would say that's probably one of the best practices. And then I would go on to just say transparency throughout the project is another best practice, no matter who you're working with. This involves construction, and it's not necessarily just it's not a pop-up project that is temporary. This is a project that lasts for a generation or more. So it needs to be done right and professional. So just transparency with budgeting and transparency with construction all the way through. And then finally, I would just say that, a deep kind of your classic best practice at the very end, debrief. Let's talk about, it's important to talk about, did you meet your goals? And what other things you want out of this marketing, press release, what kind of involvement do you want with the community? So I would say those are three just off the top of my head that have been important to us. Set your goals, be clear about those, be transparent in your construction and budgeting, and then three, do a after project debrief.
That's great, thank you. Can you expand a little bit more about how you prioritize diversity, equity, inclusion in some of these projects?
Absolutely. As I said earlier, it's a big, complex project topic. And so we are, as we work with different corporations, one of the things we're trying to make sure that we really focus in on are the neighborhoods that need parks and playgrounds. So there's a lot of data out there, and so we curate that data. So I'll just give you a couple of examples, real life examples. The Trust for Public Land has data about 10-minute walk to a park. They have data out there about park need. And so there's no reason for us to recreate the wheel, right? So we can use data that's already out there. So we can look at where there's a park need, and their park need is based on usually on demographic or lack of investment. So we look there. We can pull health data. So we can begin to look at where are the areas of the country, the areas of your town, your city, your community that have the highest comorbidities. I mean, the highest risk for diabetes, the highest risk for cardiovascular disease, and we can start to pinpoint those areas in your community. We can also look at race and gender, and we can begin to look at where are those areas that have a park need, that are childhood poverty, and are broken down by race. And we can begin to think about where there's an equitable issue of equitable access to play and where there's a deficiency there. And we can identify those with a big, red dot on the map. And then we begin telling corporations or working with a company that's really interested in having an impact in that area. And we can say, we think an investment should be made in these 2 to 3 to 10 to 20 spaces across your community or across your state or across your region. So that's just an example of how we begin to tie in. Now, one other thing that's very practical is that when we go into communities, we can manage the construction from afar, but we don't go out, but we want to make sure we hire local labor. And so when we hire local labor, we can also ensure that we are doing our best to hire, minority contractors, designers, team members, to make sure that we're also working to meet those alignment of goals.
That's great. Next question is, aside from brand recognition, once a park is completed, do investors, companies, sponsors, how do they continue to engage with the community through the park?
Right. So, there's community engagement on the front end and community, some work throughout. So we can actually go work with the company and the corporation and say, hey, here's how we're designing this. Is this something that your company likes? Are we moving in the right direction? And then, of course, there's the ribbon cuttings, there's the groundbreaking and the ribbon cutting. And those are kind of your typical milestones throughout a construction project: the beginning, the the groundbreaking event and maybe the ribbon cutting event. So those are kind of your typical ways. But after the park is open, I would recommend that corporations stay engaged by helping doing cleanups and helping doing park programming. Even we know that parks are attended better, and they have less crime and less trash, less of all that stuff if there's more programming happening there. So if there's more people in the park, there's usually less crime at that park. So I would say a great kind of thing after the park is open for that corporation companies is to stay engaged in that park. Help with some regular cleanups, maybe even do some programming at the site.
That's great. Thank you. Reminder, if anyone else has some questions, please put them in. This is the last question in the queue. Although I have one also I will ask.
Okay.
What are some examples, unique examples of features in the parks that have been specific to inclusivity and accessibility?
So specific elements, specific, features. Is that kind of what we're?
I think it's features.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me just kind of back up a little bit. This all started luckily with the American Disabilities Act, the ADA, that kind of got us to a certain level. Like that was the bottom, that was the base standard. And what that did, it got everybody to say, okay, you can get to the park or you can get to the playground. And that's, you saw a lot of that with sidewalk renovations or ramps and things like that. So you may have been able to get to the park or the facility, but that did not mean that you were able necessarily to interact and play with everybody. You may have been segregated over to a certain area that had a certain kind of, an element over there of play that was just for kids with a disability. Now, the surfacing has changed so much with technology that the surfacing of the rubber poured in place that allows for everybody to be able to get around the space in an easier way. I mean, even some of the stairs and the climbing are there in a way where we can design those in a way so that every kid can have access to that same area. Maybe they're not up the steps, but they're right next to it, or they're up a ramp right next to it. And designs have come a long way. And I'd be happy to share some of those latest designs that we've been involved with the group that's on this webinar. We can share some of the most recent designs that show some of these just fantastic designs.
Great. I'm not sure if you've said this, but in terms of length of project, how long is usually the typical span from the time like a company says, yes, we'd like to work with you on something like this, to like the opening of a park?
Sure. It's a great question. And you can imagine it's been changing over the past 2 years with COVID and supply chain. But, and I'm going to say this knowing that things can still change, right? So we manufacture the majority of our equipment in Fort Payne, Alabama. So not too far away from where our headquarters is here in Chattanooga. And so in every company is a little bit different, but we have a manufacturing facility right here in Fort Payne, Alabama. So not too far away. And the lead time on the equipment, once the park is designed, the lead time is between 8 and 12 weeks to manufacture, paint, develop, and deliver. So the design time partially depends on what the corporation, the company wants. Community engagement on the front end. So let's call it 2 months on the front end of design, 8 weeks to 12 weeks of manufacturing. And then another, depending again on the size and shape of the facility, we're working on a project in Mississippi where we think we can install a playground within 2 weeks because it's a very basic playground and we can get that done in 2 weeks. So, if you add that up, we're at 2 months. What is that? 12 weeks, you're 6 months.
It's like a 4 to 6 months project at the best case scenario. So
exactly.
Great.
Yeah.
So this is our last question, unless, again, audience, please chime in.
Okay.
So when a corporation is thinking about, a new project or partnering with a new partner, there's always some challenges involved. What are some challenges that you think some of our members could anticipate as they think about a project like this?
Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, it is a construction project. And if anybody's ever built a house, or, there's always some construction bumps and bruises throughout the time frame, whether it's delay on equipment or whether it's, weather related or something like that. So, I can't tell you how many times we've had a planned ribbon cutting and then there's been a big rainstorm. And so you delay the ribbon cutting. However, we try to make that as easy as possible because we do this every day. So those kinds of bumps and bruises throughout the construction, again, transparency is really important throughout the construction process of having weekly kind of, in the construction world, it's called an owner's architect meeting, almost weekly or even monthly. So we have those kinds of meetings to keep sure that transparency, there's no surprises. So construction is probably one of the areas where there's some potential there of some bumps along the way. At the beginning, I think it's really important. Again, I go back to having your goals. We want to make sure, and you want to make sure, that on the front end, you define your goals on the front end so that on the back end, nobody's surprised. That we can deliver together as a partner, we can deliver a project or a product that you're satisfied with, your customer is satisfied with, and something that we can all measure and report on together.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Sarah, if you wouldn't mind popping in the chat the link to the survey. We do encourage everyone on the call to fill out the surveys because your feedback is very important to us.
Okay.
Before I thank Rick, I just want to thank you, but also tie in this activity to some of the priorities of our members that we hear about every day. And I never really thought about how a park project could help a company promote their health and safety goals, in terms of benefiting community, in terms of improving mental health, promoting diversity, equity, inclusion, strengthening local economies. It's actually a really innovative, interesting way of achieving some of these goals that we know so many companies within the ACCP community are making priorities right now. So I would like to thank you, Rick, for your time and your wisdom. I encourage members to get in touch with Impact Parks. We are pleased that they also will be with us at our annual conference in the fall. So another opportunity to get to meet you and hear more about that. And I want to thank all the participants for joining us today and encourage you to join us for the rest of the CSR Marketplace live sessions later today and tomorrow. So with that, thanks everyone for joining us.
Great, thank you.